Shut hooks. In 2021, Jeff Bezos paid $0 in federal income tax. Zero on a personal fortune that grew by $75 billion. Pattern interrupt threes. And he's not alone. Elon Musk, Warren Buffett, Michael Bloomberg, they've all done it, year after year, using a system that's completely legal. Pattern interrupt 12s. This isn't about offshore accounts or shady loopholes. It's a mechanism so embedded in the tax code that the IRS literally published a guide for it. Pattern interrupt 22s. Here's the twist. You've probably used part of this strategy without even knowing it, but the rich use it to skip the tax bill entirely. And once you see how it works, you'll never look at money the same way again. Hook end. Act 1. The setup. Let's start with a story. Imagine you're a farmer. You grow corn every year, sell it, and pay tax on the income. That's how normal people work. You earn a salary, you pay income tax. Now imagine you own the entire farm, but instead of selling the corn, you take out a loan using the corn as collateral. You live off that loan money, which isn't considered income. Meanwhile, the corn keeps growing in value. That's the core idea behind how the ultra-wealthy avoid taxes. They don't earn income like we do. They don't sell their assets. They borrow against them. Pattern interrupt. Here's the key number. In 2020, the top 1% of Americans held over 50% of the country's corporate equity and mutual fund shares. But they reported only 20% of the taxable capital gains. Why? Because they don't sell. They borrow. And when they die, their heirs inherit those assets with a massive tax break called the step-up in basis. Cliffhanger. But let's back up. To understand how this works, you need to know the biggest misconception about rich people's wealth. AST2. The mechanism. Most people think billionaires have billions in cash sitting in checking accounts. They don't. Their wealth is in stocks, real estate, private businesses, illiquid assets. Warren Buffett's net worth is $120 billion, but his salary from Berkshire Hathaway is just $100,000 a year. He lives off the appreciation of his assets, not income. So how does he pay for his house, his plane, his lifestyle? He uses a strategy called buy, borrow, die. Pattern interrupt. Let me break it down in 3 steps. Step 1. Buy. You buy assets that appreciate in value. Stocks, real estate, art. You hold them for decades. Step 2. Borrow. Instead of selling those assets and triggering a capital gains tax, you take out a loan against them. Banks love this because your collateral is solid. You pay a low interest rate, currently around 2 to 4% for these types of loans. That interest is often deductible. And the loan proceeds? Not taxable income. The IRS has ruled since 1918 that borrowing money isn't income. Pattern interrupt. Here's where it gets wild. The rich don't even need to pay back the loan. They can refinance it indefinitely. As long as the asset grows faster than the interest rate, their net worth keeps climbing. They live tax-free on borrowed money. And then, step 3. Die. When the borrower dies, the loan is repaid from the estate. But here's the magic. The assets get a step-up in basis to their current market value. That means all the capital gains that built up over decades are wiped out. The heirs can sell immediately with 0 capital gains tax. Cliffhanger. But there's a second layer to this that most people miss. It's not just about borrowing. It's about which assets you borrow against and how you structure the debt. RCT2. The deep dive. Let's look at a real example. In 2019, ProPublica obtained leaked IRS data showing that Jeff Bezos paid no income tax in 2007 and 2011. How? In 2007, his Amazon stock was worth billions. He didn't sell a single share that year. Instead, he used a securities-based line of credit, a loan backed by his Amazon shares, to fund his lifestyle. The interest rate was probably under 3%. Meanwhile, Amazon's stock grew over 30% that year. He made money by doing nothing with the borrowed cash. Patent interrupt. But here's the part that makes this system bulletproof. These loans are typically structured through a family office or a trust. The family office manages the borrowing, the investments, and the estate planning. It's a machine designed to minimize taxes at every turn. And the costs? A good family office charges maybe 0.5% to 1% of assets under management. For a billionaire, that's a fraction of what they save in taxes. Patent interrupt. Now you might be thinking, isn't this risky? What if the stock market crashes and the collateral drops? That's the key risk. But the rich hedge against this. They diversify. They use multiple lenders. And they have access to credit lines that are structured to survive downturns. In 2008, when Lehman Brothers collapsed, many margin loans were called. But the ultra-wealthy, with their family offices, had already set up loans with lower loan-to-value ratios, sometimes as low as 20%, ensuring they never faced a margin call. Cliffhanger. But here's the uncomfortable truth. This strategy is available to anyone with enough assets, and that's where the system gets even more interesting. ACT through. The takeaway. So what can you do with this information? First, understand that the tax code is designed to encourage investment, not labor. The system rewards those who own assets that appreciate over time. If you're a salaried employee, you're taxed at the highest rates. If you're a business owner with assets, you have more flexibility. Patent interrupt. The second takeaway is leverage. You don't need to be a billionaire to borrow against assets. If you own a home, you can use a home equity line of credit to fund investments or lifestyle expenses. The interest is often deductible. But be careful. Leverage cuts both ways. If your assets decline, you could lose everything. Patent interrupt. Finally, the biggest takeaway is about mindset. The rich think in terms of asset appreciation, not income. They focus on building things that grow in value over time, not on earning a salary. If you can shift your focus from earning money to owning assets that appreciate, you start playing the same game. Cliffhanger. Looking forward, there's a growing push to close the step-up in basis loophole. President Biden has proposed eliminating it for inheritances over $1 million. If that happens, the buy, borrow, die strategy loses its final step. But for now, it remains the single most powerful tax avoidance tool in existence. Patent interrupt. The question isn't whether the rich avoid taxes. They do, legally. The question is whether the rest of us understand the rules well enough to play the same game. Because once you see the mechanism, you can't unsee it. And that's the real power of this knowledge. End.